हेलो फ्रेंड्स, केजी क्लासेस में आपका स्वागत है। आज हम आपको ऑन द इग्नोरेंस ऑफ द लैंड बाई विलियम हैजलेट के एक्सप्लेनेशन के बारे में बताएंगे। फर्स्ट, ही इज अफ्रेड ऑफ वेंटरिंग ऑन ए फेस ऑन वन अनदर। पैरा फर्स्ट है, दीज लाइन्स अकर इन विलियम हैजलेट्स बेन नोन essay on the ignorance of the land. In this essay, the writer has introduced his subject directly, and he explains in a style tinged with an element of banter that a merely learned man hardly even makes use of his intellectual powers in a general way. His mind is so crammed with the ideas derived from books that he is engrossed in ruminating over those ideas, and in regard to the affairs of the world he shows appalling indifference to thinking. A learned man has no proper capacity for clear and creative thinking. He does not think more, if at all he has to think. He merely echoes the ideas and opinions of others, and he does it in the most mechanical manner. It is very difficult for him to remove from his mind the impression of the books he has acquired. Writings of others become oracles for him. He regards them as authority and shrinks from thinking even in the least deviation from the pattern of books. His own originality is cabined, cribbed and confined by his great regard for books. A learned man is seen all the time poring over books, and when he has no books before him, his mind is vacant because he has no capacity for thought. The ideas which he has apprehended vaguely cross his mind. Some ideas imprint themselves upon his mind, while others try to remove themselves. Thus there is a constant clash of ideas in his mind which never gets solidified and solved. His mind is always full of confusion. Next है, learning is into many से लेकर minds of others. पैरा फर्स्ट है, in this passage of his essay on the ignorance of the learned, Hazlitt says that learning ought to be placed at the service of common sense, but in real life it is seen that learning and common sense are at opposite poles. Learning is not a substitute for true knowledge, but a complement to it. It should lead to true knowledge. Books should be as spectacles to look at nature, to understand nature and life, but in actuality it is found that the books are used to subdue the light entering a room, to cover reality. The so-called learned people are constitutionally lazy, and book learning only increases their sloth. They place several barriers between themselves and reality. They lose themselves in a web of words and have only a glimpse of things through reading what others have thought of them. Thus they see shadows and not realities. A bookworm thus has no vision of his no original outlook, but sees everything through the essay of others. Next है, the impression of से लेकर letter of the alphabet. पैरा फर्स्ट, these lines are a satirical attack on the so-called learned man or scholar. Hazlitt says that a learned man is cut off from real life and has no taste of its warm and palpitating facts. It appears as if a bookworm is afraid of facing the naked truth which stand in sharp conflict with their idealistic description in the books. Life is full of infinite variety, and events move fast with a terrific speed, but the bookworm is not at all alive to them. Instead of finding interest in the real objects around him, a learned man concentrates his attention on the study of classical language, which have hardly any utility in our present day-to-day life. The reading of the classical language is described in the words, the quiet monotony of the dead languages and the attention that is given to them has been put in these words. The less startling and more intelligible combinations of the letters of the alphabet. These combinations are less startling than the happening of the real world and more intelligible because the happening of the world have an element of mastery about them. Thus, Hazlitt suggests that the scholar's interest in the classical language is not so worthy of attention as an interest in the bubbling realities of life. If the reading of books supplements one's knowledge of the affairs of the world, then it is welcome. But if it deprives a man from contacting with the realities of life, then it is certainly undesirable. Reading should enlarge our vision, should increase our understanding, should broaden our outlook. As R.L. Stevenson says, books are good enough in their own way, but they are a mighty bloodless substitute for life. It seems a pity to sit like the Lady of Shalott, peering into a mirror with your back turned on all the bustle and glamour of reality. And if a man reads very hard, as the old anecdote reminds us, he will have little time for thought. Next, leave me to my repose is Seneca of other people. Para first, the motto of the slothful and the lazy is rest. He prays to leave him to his repose in their zeal for classical dead language. The learned are no better than the dead or the semi-alive. They do not desire to be disturbed in their absorption with books by the realities of life. Like the dead in their graves, the learned in their closets also seem to be praying to be left alone in their repose. To ask them to stir out of their repose would be to expect them to perform a miracle. It is as if a person suffering from paralysis were asked to leap out of his chair, throw away the crutch which is necessary to support him, and move about on his own. Learned books are just like the crutches without which the book-bound cannot move. Jesus Christ performed a miracle when he asked a paralytic to take up his bed and walk, because the man found that the words of Jesus had healed him of his disease and he could walk. But the miracle of this type cannot be performed on the so-called learned man. He cannot be asked to give up his crutches, which is his book. These learned men are intellectual cripples, and without the aid of their intellectual crutches books, they are incapable of any movement or activity of the mind. The learned man has a horror of being left to his own intellectual devices. This horror is like the proverbial horror of a vacuum. The learned are so much dependent on books that they seem to be incapable of breathing the pure air of reality. They obey their thought and sensibility to books alone. They are dependent on books as parasites are on other creatures. Next, the habit of supplying Seneca thought or action. Para first, in this extract, William Hazlitt condemns that habit of reading which deprives a man of his capacity for original thinking. If a man reads for ability rather than for originality, well and good. But if he reads only for ornamentation and affectation, then his reading damages his originality. Quoting a line from Goldsmith, enfeeble all internal strength of thought. Hazlitt says that the loss of originality is something very serious, and excessive reading is responsible for it, just as excessive dose of drum impair the digestive organs. A little dose of drum may prove beneficial for the stomach, but an excessive quantity of dream may be harmful. Similarly, the reading of a few books which have stood the test of the times has a stimulating and inspiring effect on the mind. But if one is absorbed in reading informative books all the time, then one is incapacitated for thought. Since most of the reading is receptive, its effect is not the least stimulating. Excessive reliance on what others have said or what is written in books crimps the vision and narrows the sphere of the mind's activity. Scholars read a great deal, but they do not try to assimilate what they have read. So Hazlitt attacked no reading itself but ill-digested knowledge. नेक्स्ट है द थिंग इन फैक्ट विच से लेकर अदर थिंग पैरा सेकेंड. दिस इज ए ब्रिलियंट अटैक ऑन द कंटेम्प्रेरी सिस्टम ऑफ एजुकेशन. अकॉर्डिंग टू हैजलिट, सच ए सिस्टम ऑफ एजुकेशन एज बीइंग practiced in his times in England does not take into account the aptitude and taste of pupils. What goes by the name of brilliance in school life does not depend on the higher faculties of mind. Originality of thinking and creativity are not developed by this education. It only develops the lower kind of faculties such as memory. Many of lessons, for example those in the language and in grammar, require only endless repetition and cramming. Such students as are produced by this system have no zeal for the actual business of living. The typically brilliant school boy is generally no good at anything else. What he is taught at school, such as inflection and conjugations, cannot have any appeal to an average boy of 10 whose taste and attitudes are healthy and normal. He has at last to take some interest in something because he is incapable of taking in anything else. नेक्स्ट है एन एडलर एट स्कूल से लेकर क्रिसमस एंड मिड समर्स. पैरा सेकेंड. In this passage, Hazlitt is speaking of his disapproval of being a bookworm at school. Having described in detail the handicaps and disabilities which the so-called learned scholars suffer from, he goes on to describe the beneficial effects of excessive reading. It is generally seen that a so-called good student who has always an eyes on medal and prizes becomes physically a weakling because he has to be busy all the time in poring over books. As contrasted with this brilliant student, a healthy young boy does not care much for the formal and regular pattern of studies, spends a good deal of time on enjoying the fine things of life. He wanders about in the midst of nature's loveliness, watches the beauteous aspects and things intently and enthusiastically, and receives impression from them. He possesses a robust common sense, and since all his senses and faculties are alert, he enjoys unbroken health, unlike the so-called brilliant student who is morose looking and previous. The idler is of a humorous disposition. He can laugh heartily when the occasion demands it, and is interested not only in the petty and narrow self of his own but in the general life around him. The affairs and problems of his class fellows, friends, and acquaintances interest him deeply, and he is prepared to do whatever he can for them. Cramming the spelling of a foreign or classical language, or trying to learn the account and intonation of speaking it from his master, and to be sitting and the time on the study desk are certainly not more delightful activities than making a desirable use of one's faculties and capacities for enjoyment in the open atmosphere of nature. It is true that the so-called brilliant student wins prizes and medals, but at a great cost. That is at the cost of sacrificing numerous sources of health and happiness. Next, the vulgar are in the right से लेकर humanity. Para 6. In the earlier paragraph, Hazlitt said that books centered learning bereft of common sense is not much useful. In the present passage, Hazlitt says that the common people are superior to the learned in certain natural qualities, such as presence of mind and practical awareness of the problems and issues before them. Why did not of these and similar qualities, the common men are better able to decide what contributes to their welfare than their so-called learned guides and leaders. By giving an example from Baxter's life, Hazlitt illustrates that though learned man possesses plausibility by means of which they can make the worse appear the better reason, they prove no good guides to the pupil. Baxter was a religious preacher and rather dogmatic and uncompromising in his attitude. When he showed the audacity to declare that hell was paved with infants' skulls, the women who heard it got so much infuriated that they began to throw stones at him. Hazlitt says that this view was obviously courageous to the sentiments and humanity of women. Although the learned preachers succeeded in convincing the audience by dint of logical argument, in fact anything can be proved by means of arguments, and even the devil can cite scripture for his purpose to support his inhuman principles. But wisdom is something superior even to the most brilliant sophistries of intellect. Wisdom always stands for humanity, generosity, cooperation, and fellow feeling. Later on, the learned preacher succeeded in stifling the very natural reaction of a congregation in the village of Kidderminster by giving them learned quotations from theological writing to prove that the infants are all damned and that hell is paved with their skull. Next, how little has Seneca and Scopius. Para 7. In the present extract, William Hazlitt has pointed out that most of the efforts of scholars and learned men have been employed in such activities as have yielded no substantial gains to mankind as a whole. The plodding and industrious scholarship of the learned man has not yet cared to find out what in reality is beneficial for common person. They have employed their argumentative skill and their mass erudition in proving their own particular sects are good for mankind. Tons of ink and hundreds and thousands of reams of paper have been wasted in writing those books which deal with controversial issues of theology, law, politics, and study of words, and have no bearing at all on general human welfare. Quoting a number of authorities of different areas of knowledge, Hazlitt points out that their works have no practical utility. In quoting such unfamiliar names of the authors and their works, Hazlitt has shown himself also as a man of wide and immense learning. Without an intimate knowledge of these authors and their works, Hazlitt would not have been able to declare them as unprofitable for mankind. Next, Shakespeare had not been से लेकर commentators. Para 8. Hazlitt earlier made a distinction between an educated and an uneducated mind. To him, Milton is the prime example of an educated genius and Shakespeare of an uneducated mind. Hazlitt uses the word uneducated to mean the sense of unspoilt by education and not illiterate. Milton was so well educated that his writings are saturated with book learning. Shakespeare's education should have been brief and perfunctory. That is why it could not extinguish his inborn genius. Shakespeare's mind must not have been so completely molded by the raised business of writing the pros and cons in school's essays. Consequently, his morality is not cumbersome or tiresome. So Hazlitt advises the reader to give up too much formalized and academic education. Shakespeare's work is the proof of what uneducated genius can achieve, whereas the commentaries of Shakespeare scholars are only a proof of the fact that learning and scholarship are only insignificant things. Note: we should not take Hazlitt's comment on their face value. Hazlitt himself was not the writer of the Order of Shakespeare and himself commented on various aspects of Shakespeare's art. Among other things, he gave an excellent account of the comic character of Shakespeare. Thanks, best of luck.